So good afternoon. Right, we shall dive straight into it. This session is entitled Everyone a Change Maker World through Collaboration, Co-Creation, and Co-Leadership. And Wamuyu has gone through some of these terminologies and defined them so well. In this call to action session, we will focus on the concept of social entrepreneurship, social innovation, and how individuals and organizations can work together to create positive, sustainable on the continent. The term change maker is used to refer to individuals who actively seek to create positive social impact, whether as social entrepreneurs or established or emerging innovators. We will explore related topics in identifying social problems, developing innovative solutions, building effective partnerships and collaborations, and fostering co-leadership and co-creation among diverse stakeholders. At this point, allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists, starting with Wamuyu Mahinda, with Collaborative Value Partners, Co-Chair Catalyst 2030 Africa Chapter, and Ashoka Fellow. We can give her a round of applause. We have Hannah Munyasi, the Fundraising Coordinator, Child Sponsorship and Local Fundraising, an organization that supports child sponsorship and local fundraising activities. A round of applause for her. We have Charles Kimathi, Head of Corporate Affairs, Standard Group, PLC, a leading media outlet that operates several media outlets, including Standard Newspaper, KTN TV, I think Vibe Radio, and Radio Maisha. A round of applause for Charles. And we have Benjamin Makai, a Senior Product Manager at Safaricom, the leading telecoms company in Kenya, with products in mobile fixed data services as well as mobile money, popularly known as M-Pesa, to both consumers and businesses. So that's our panel. Let's give Benjamin a round of applause as well. Yes? Okay, I move closer. Oh, it's a silo. Oh. Come closer to me. I am John Karanja, a head teacher at Nairobi Academy, just next to Tangaza College. We collaborate with Tangaza and Kwea Catholic University in a number of areas, considering that we are in education. We offer internships to a number of students from this college. Actually, one of our best math teachers graduated from this college. So, as a teacher, I can give you a short story that will sort of give us a picture of where we're going into the future. My grandmother told me she went to school under a tree, and they would use charcoal to scribe their names or alphabets or numerals on the ground. A generation later was my mother. They had classrooms, not enough for all the students, and girls were not a priority in education, so there was inequity. She had an exercise book for all the subjects. But then, for every subject, a teacher had one textbook, which would be circulated in the classroom for the students to look at or see illustrations. Into my generation, a few years after, I was in a school with many classrooms, not under a tree, but we had an exercise book for every subject and a textbook for every subject. The teacher was still, in this case, the center of knowledge. We were tabula rasa and we were recipients of that knowledge. From a center of high zone of concentration, we were in the low zone of concentration. Into a different generation, my children, they are in a world where AI is a big debate in their classroom. They have access to multiple innumerable apps, resources, libraries, books. Their world is very different from the other worlds. And the question is, as educators, what do we need to do so that we're not educating with our background for the past, yet we're supposed to be educating for the future? So we do not know how the world will be like in a few years to come or in the generations downstream, but today we will discuss some of those things to sort of create an image or a picture of how their world and the descendants downstream will look like. And so I would like to ask the first question, although it might be redundant because some of the things you might have to repeat again for the sake of those who have come in a little later, to Wamuyu Mahinda, and how do we create a culture of collaboration, co-creation, and co-leadership to ensure that everyone has a change maker world and mindset? And what do these terminologies ideally mean?
That's a very loaded question. Sorry. Thank you. Yes, thank you for that question. We are looking at the ecosystem, and the ecosystem, depending on where you are sitting or standing, has different players. If you're a private sector organization, for example, you are working with a community and you're working with government. If you're a school, you're working with students and you're working with parents and you're working with the community. So depending on who your ecosystem is, you have to intentionally think about how you work together. Because the only way everyone can make a change in your ecosystem is by everybody being intentional. And the one who starts that journey is the person with the know-how. Because the parent may not understand the value of collaboration because they maybe have not been exposed to that unless they have been to a conference like this one, where now that begins to become a reality for them. If you're a private sector company, and by the way, this is one of the more difficult organizations, or rather should I say, people who, when it comes to collaboration. I have a fund, I'm running a fund called the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment, where I'm inviting private sector companies to join hands with NGOs and civil societies to create jobs. The private sector companies are like, what do you mean? You're giving us money. We are in the business of creating money, not being given money. So they're not even opening up to the whole consortium story and how they can collaborate for everybody to, co-create and come up with a solution. So it's not that easy to get everybody to collaborate. But I'm very happy that the conversation is ongoing, and that in a conference like this, we have private sector partners, because it has to start somewhere. And then, it's not an NGO story. That's the other thing we have to know, because people used to say, no, this is for NGOs. Collaboration, co-creation, and all those things are for NGOs. No. And that is why we say everyone a change maker, because it's all of us, wherever we are, in whichever ecosystem we are in. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I think I like the aspect of intentionality by all the actors and by all the players to spend time to collaborate and to get vested in collaboration. Moving on to Hannah Munyao, of Action Aid. What are some of the key skills, frameworks, methodologies, and initiatives that support this new world that we envision to have into the future, and how can they be acquired, adopted, grown, and nurtured on the African continent?
Thank you for the question, still very loaded as well. I'll start by saying that as Action Aid, we are an NGO in Kenya, and we intentionally work to support women and girls to challenge inequality and injustices. And I want to say that even as I answer your question, the world is rapidly changing, and I think it is very key for us to be awake to the reality that the world is dynamic, is changing. Riding on to what you have just talked about, we are in a new world, but now we need to look at the future and how we envision it to be based on the realities of our day. I'll take an example of the issue of climate change, because it is here with us as a global crisis, and we are awake to that fact. That is a problem that is affecting individuals at a personal level. So we have women, girls, young people, children, all being affected individually. And even as we collaborate and try to look at the framework and how we solve these issues, we have to ensure that as everyone is coming to the table, because as it has been said that everyone needs to come to the front at the table, we are all change makers. we need to be aware of the ecosystem and be able to solve what the barriers that come to it. Some of the barriers that come even to social entrepreneurs and to any challenge that we face. We've talked about the finance as a barrier and also the policies. For any legal framework and for us to have a new world where we vision that there is an enabling environment, we have to be able to challenge and look at the ecosystem and look at what is ailing us. If it is the issue of policies, how can we be best placed to ensure that we have policies in place that ensure an enabling environment to social entrepreneurs? I'll take an example of women because it's what we champion. If we are to be able to create an enabling environment for women, we picture the woman at the community level. We work with women who go through myriad of challenges. There are issues of GBV and all that. And when we look at this woman, how do we help in solving the issues that face them? First, by involving them and ensuring that they are at the table. We work with government and private sector, and especially government because of the policy issues. We have been very key in looking at the policy frameworks that ensure that women are empowered economically. I can talk of an example where in Isiolo, in Taita Taveta, women realized a need or a challenge that they were farming mangoes, but they were going to waste. And the Mucho Mangoes is a social entrepreneurship that came up, and they were able to look at that problem and be able to solve the issue of wastage by being trained on value addition, entrepreneurial skills, and then they are able to build themselves, export, and bring them to another level. So I think looking at everything and being able to challenge the barrier that is hindering the social entrepreneur, the social innovation, is very key for us to be able to realize a new world order. And just as a rider to that, as we look at the new world and what we envision, we have to embrace issues of agroecology and climate resilience. We have talked here of many solutions that are able to bring a change. So it is only right that we fund and finance solutions and innovations that are able to be cognizant of the energy and renewable sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like when somebody talks about gender. I was brought up by my grandmother and my mother, and I work with children. So what you've said was music to my ears. Charles, how can we weaponize the media to bring about collaboration between different actors, co-creation, and promote co-leadership? I hope that's not as loaded.
No, that is not as loaded. Yeah, and I really appreciate that question because I'll tell you a short story. In our encounter with a lot of social entrepreneurs, including people within the Ashoka network at Tangaza as well and elsewhere, one thing that always came up was that nobody really knew, or as they say, nobody knows what we are doing. What can the media therefore do to ensure that these stories are amplified? And that for us was a big challenge. And I'm not talking about conversations I had last year or the year before. This is like 5-6 years ago. So one of the things we did as Standard Media Group was to take up that challenge and say, look, we will be at the forefront of driving this agenda for change making. What that required us to do, therefore, was to look inward and decide we must start with ourselves. How are we structured as an organization? And we began to change that. One of the things that we knew we must do to get into that world is to understand it. So we set up a foundation. It's the Standard Media Group Foundation. And the moment we did that, it became quite clear to a lot of us in the media as journalists that, that is really a new world for us. The language was different, the way you interact is different, the way you finance it obviously is also different. But what was even more important was then how do we move this agenda and carry everybody else with us? So we began to set up initiatives, different types of initiatives. So we looked at the farming agenda, of course, for Africa is very important. We created the Farm Kenya initiative, and a lot of social entrepreneurs are actually within that space. So we looked also at education, created something we are calling the Great Places to School. And the key with all these initiatives is that the underlying theme there was partnerships. How do we bring people together and walk the journey with them? Now, when you go to a point of social entrepreneurship, then it became clear that this is not just a Kenyan agenda. It is African and it's global. So we began to change our systems to fit into what the social entrepreneur needed. So right now, the kind of conversation you hear us having is about how do you create impact? If you go to a corporate anywhere, the first thing is profit. You think, what's the profit margin? How much, what's the revenue on this? What is the return on investment? That still happens, but there's a lot more conversation around what is the social impact? How are you going to influence the outcomes? And indeed, what are those outcomes? So in a conversation in a boardroom at the Standard Media Group, you'll begin to hear, on the one hand, those who speak about return on investment, and those of us who are talking about social impact. And I think that is then the direction we believe as an innovative media house that we should drive. And it's not just for our own sake, but to become the champion for the social entrepreneurship agenda for Africa. So what we do, and that is where, in fact, we have collaborated very closely with the Tangaza University and Ashoka and other partners, is to ensure that anyone who has an innovative idea, who has an enterprise that must be amplified, then has a safe space. Safe in the sense that we are not going to be too critical. Has it succeeded? Where did you fail last year? How long have you taken to succeed? No, we want to then walk the journey with you because we know that success will probably come in 3, 4, or 5 years. And that is then the change that we are driving within the media house.
Oh, thank you. I think when you talk about being at the forefront of social impact, that's a very good aspect of it, moving beyond the return to investment as a profit priority and so on. So just like Standard, Safaricom is a very dynamic company. It almost looks like a new company every other year with many, many products every other morning. How do you catalyze and what have you catalyzed? What have you done to achieve this particular agenda that we're discussing here today? Because it sounds or seems like you were ahead of time before this discussion came up.
So thank you so much for that question. And actually, before I respond to your question, I would want to maybe add on what my fellow panelists talked about. And not like most of the private sector are not very keen to collaborate, but you need to have the reason why you're going to collaborate. Partnerships, as you mentioned initially, is they are all about creating more value together, managing a severe one, and eventually actually reaping the benefits of the value you've created together. So when you talked about 1 + 1 is equals to 2, 1 + 1 is equals to 1, I mean, it's not quite new to us. It's only that in the private sector, we need to find a reason why we should sort of like partner with you and how does it contribute towards our missions and what you want to do. But the good news is that organizations such as ours have realized the value of what we call shared value. I'm fortunate to be steering conversations which are anchored towards shared value in Safaricom, in the sense that out there, depending on the lens which you want to look at the organization like Safaricom, Safaricom is very innovative and successful company. But actually, at the back office, at the end of it, there are quite a number of things which are have to be put into perspective for us to be able to come up with some of these innovations. all of you here are part of it as change makers, as partners, because nothing comes from us as an organization. It's an ecosystem of so many actors. So what are some of the key things we are trying to do as an organization? Is to look at it totally differently. To all of us, Safaricom is known as the home of M-Pesa. You're able to send SMSs. You're also able to make a call, mobile data. But we are going beyond the technology side of it and asking ourselves, what are the new other growth opportunities which are also impactful, which we can focus on? So you find Safaricom working with the government on the fertilizer subsidy initiative. You will also find us working with the other NGOs to do maternal health related initiatives. But inside the organization now, for us to be able to do, for us to be at a position to do that, a lot of things have to change, mind shifts. So for instance, using the team which I had, technology for development in Safaricom, I have a group of product managers of whom we work with. Product development is one of the most crucial aspects, or rather crucial roles within an organization, because you can never create something which doesn't resonate with the masses. And if it doesn't resonate with the customers, the solution you are creating doesn't won't really fly, or it won't really be taken by the market. So for them to be able to do that, you have to give them the autonomy to make decisions, and also give them an autonomy to interact with customers so that they can understand them. And that leads me to some of the methodologies that the moderator asked. And it's all about ways in which you can be more agile to address most of the pressing issues within the society. You can also think of design thinking, of which Ashoka talked about extensively, in terms of like you have to empathize with the people you want to collaborate with, you want to develop solutions with, or rather you want to co-create with. So these are new mind shifts, mindsets which have to be inculcated in enterprises such as ours and corporate in general.
We were saying we are the ones working with youth on the ground. If you co-create with us, if you talk to us, we will tell you what youth are saying, and we will bring the youth so that we have a conversation with our youth who are part of our innovation, and we'll be able to discuss how youth want to work and how they like to work and how they can work with you. And it will be an easier solution in the sense that it will be a win-win. Now, in this particular case, it was, we have youth that are going through TVET. As you know, in Kenya, they go through technical institutions. They learn masonry or electrical, blah, blah, blah. Now, these people can be employed by government, but the truth is they actually don't have the real skills that, for example, this particular program needed. So we brought in a social entrepreneur who is working on skilling this youth. And we say, let's not reinvent the wheel. We already have social entrepreneurs that have very good mechanism of skilling the youth to do the work the way you want it done. And actually those social entrepreneurs were taken up by government. So that is an example. So whether we are going to Congo or going to any other country, social entrepreneurs have cracked quite a number of ways of work. Whether it is with women, because like she said, she works with women. Other organizations work with boys. Others work with young people of different whatever. Others are in agriculture. And because they know how to do this, why is it that private sector companies and government, I'm still bringing private sector because they're here, I'm challenging them, they call consultants and sit with them and want to solve the same problems that have been solved by social entrepreneurs over time. So bring in these social entrepreneurs, co-create with them, and quickly resolve the gap that you have, because the answers are there. And I believe that we have seen that work where there's the relearning, and I believe that all the private sector partners who are here going forward will ask themselves, like I keep on saying, what is being done by social entrepreneurs? These are the innovators in your community. What are they doing? Can we work with them? Can we solve our problem through the solution that has already been created? If the answer is no, then we can co-create. But the answer is there. Let's go with that answer and scale it. Thank you.
capacity building and so on, and just being together, accepting to learn. I like what he said, that sometimes Safaricom will attend events like this to relearn, to learn, and to see what's happening. So I think that's a very good discussion. Moving on to Hannah. Grassroots movements have been instrumental in driving systemic change, seen in various social movements across Africa. The example of #EndSARS in Nigeria. As ActionAid, how do you see grassroots movements contributing to the creation of an everyone a change maker world?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. And I just want to say that there is power in people and there is power in grassroots movements. And I think the power of the masses is a force that we need to appreciate and be able to utilize in some of the championing that we are doing. ActionAid, we work with social movements, we work with youth, and we have a global platform hub, and we work with youth. We call them activistas, and they are activistas for real because they champion youth issues for youth empowerment. And one of the key things that we have done with the youth activistas and also with the students on campus, I'll talk about a social movement that we had called Campus Me Too. We know in universities there are issues around sex for grades, and we started a social movement that is going around all universities called Campus Me Too. And this movement has really been useful in being able to champion the problem and being able to ask people to speak out in safe spaces. Those are social movements that are in place. And other movements with the women movements are equally strong, because when they come together as women and they're able to champion and talk about the challenges they face, they are able to hold systems accountable, because sometimes you need the social movements to be able to demand and ask for transparency and hold the systems accountable, because some of the issues that they face are issues of rights. And once they are aware, because we also do the issue of empowering and ensuring they know their rights, they are able to challenge and hold systems accountable. So I believe that social movements are a very key part of any, if we want to achieve social change, because there's people in the social movement act as drivers for social change. Thank you.
I think that question was profoundly responded to, and I like that you have talked about social movements and really advocated for that as a driver and a motive, the motive for innovation being the power of the masses. And I think it goes back to what the previous panelists had said, that products and innovation are driven by the needs on the ground. Moving on to Charles, I would like to read something to give it context. Given the political affiliations of communities and the resulting challenges to cross-sectoral collaboration, how can social entrepreneurship be used to bridge political divides and drive systemic change towards a more equitable economic and political development, especially through media?
Thank you. I would like to begin by saying that, social entrepreneurship has no tribe. I think if you must use the word tribe for social entrepreneurship, it has to be social impact, which then is cross-cutting. There's nothing that is more fulfilling than seeing young people across different communities, indeed across different countries, working to solve common social problems. We use media, of course, for a lot of reasons, in many ways, political. We've seen politicians ride on media, achieve the objective, but I think for an innovative media like the Standard Group, that has deliberately decided to champion spaces that are neglected, for social entrepreneurs, it could be neglected tropical diseases, as we are doing with our foundation. Then you create, but it has to be deliberate, that you create spaces, platforms where all these conversations can be held without any interference from any other, interests. And indeed, to provide adequate space and time, because that is usually the challenge with media, that it's dedicated space for that conversation. Now, that is what we see as the future, because it is not, in any, go to Kibera, which communities are there? You can't quite tell. Everybody is there. Now, I think it's the same with any African country, any African city. So the media, I think, is central in bridging those gaps, focusing attention on what is truly important, which is in solving our social problems, some of which are very deep-seated. But then from a media perspective, it is that the media must deliberately take action to bring about that change. If it doesn't, then you become led by the story of the day. But once you reverse that, as we have done, then we decide, as we have done, for instance, that we decide a social entrepreneurship conference of this nature is important. We decide to give it live coverage. We decide to put it on social media, on our online platforms, and across all other platforms that we have. What that does is that there's already a shift in what is considered important, because the agenda has been set by just the manner in which we've projected this story. So I think to answer your question is that the media then plays a central role in setting that agenda and shaping the discussion. That narrative begins to shift. We have seen that narrative shift. As I want to give an example, in fact, in relation to what Wamuyu said, about just what we are doing within the Tibet sector. In 2016 and earlier in this country, Tibets were not that important. It's all about universities. We made the deliberate decision as media to support that sector. It was not funded, very poorly funded even by government. But we knew if we kept at it, something will change. And it did change. Today, everybody's talking about the Tibet sector. If you talk to some of these institutions in 2016, they had no students. Nobody wanted to go there. And we quickly changed that narrative. It is the same success that we want to achieve within this conversation on how social entrepreneurship then would change the narrative for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the word deliberate action has come out very strongly across from all the panelists. I would like to ask Benjamin Macau, and I will also load it with a bit of context. How can we break down the silos that have traditionally existed in different sectors, governments, and industries, and create a more integrated, collaborative approach to problem solving, borrowing from Safaricom's model?
That's a loaded question, actually, in the sense it has to be anchored on a shared vision. So everything has to be anchored on a shared vision. And out of that, it's through having a shared vision that you are able to say that this is the direction we want to take, these are the capabilities I have, and these are the capabilities you have. How can we bring all these capabilities together as we try to serve maybe a certain constituency? So I've seen it quite a lot in our context as a corporate Safaricom. So we start quite a number of things, but we need to work with a number of other different organizations. And the key is to paint a rallying call. So if you look at an organization like ours, we would say like we are here to transform lives. Quite a number of other organizations are also here to transform lives. So the key thing is like we need to settle to a middle ground and say like this is how you are going to leverage on our assets, and this is how you're going to leverage on your assets and capabilities as we try to transform lives of these people. We are all operating in the same environment. We are all serving the same constituents. We are a Kenyan company. So you find us partnering with the government quite a lot and other like-minded organizations which are working in this particular country. So are we experts in that area? We wouldn't say we are experts in that area, and actually we are quite open in the sense that we don't want to leave anyone behind. We want to share what we know as we also learn from them. So I don't know whether I've really answered your question or now we could really do that, but I tend to believe like it's all about bringing ideas together, those together, and being driven by the desire and quest to do what is right. To the industry, one of the key things you are doing is to encourage people learn what motivates you to do what you are doing. Change making, or rather being a change maker, being a catalyst, could be defined very differently in different setups. I call myself an entrepreneur in Safaricom, but when I come up with an interesting product or service, my colleagues could call me an innovator. Actually, innovators are the people who are here because they are the ones who come up with the idea. But for us, we facilitate. We are entrepreneurs because we leverage on the assets of our organizations, the brand assets, the capabilities, and the opportunities which are available there to change our life out there. So the word still remains a collaboration, and it's all about collaboration within and collaboration actually outside, because it has to start within as you try to extend it outside. Hopefully, I've answered your loaded question because, yeah.
I was just curious to know how corporates would motivate other actors like government. There was a mention about how government sometimes receives some of these things and adopts. And I think you have talked about shared values, and that has answered the question.
Sure, good.
I just want to do a final round before you can make your final remarks and ask Wamuyu to paint for us a picture of the future world after collaboration, co-creation, and co-leadership. What will that world look like for the descendants downstream?
Great. The way I see, that's a good question either way, because I dream about this all the time, so it's a good question. I see a world where resources are very well utilized, because one of the things that bothers me today is working in silos where the resources are being used over and over again instead of being used to scale. So you give 3 organizations, for example, resources to think about youth employment, for example. And they all come up with the same solution, meaning we've wasted the resources, whereas we could have put them together, worked together in a consortium, developed that same solution because it was the same anyway, but divided into 3, and then scale that. Now, looking at it from a national perspective, if we are, government is solving the problem of youth employment, social entrepreneurs are solving the youth employment problem. Private sector is doing the same. If we can come together, all of us, and map out how we solve the problem of youth employment in Kenya, it means including academia. It means that whatever resources we have, limited or otherwise, will go further, much, much further than we are going right now. So look, when I look at it globally, like now at Catalyst 2030, where it's a movement of social entrepreneurs, where we are saying we want to meet the SDGs by 2030. That's why we are called Catalyst 2030. We have 4 pillars. One pillar is youth employment, and we are looking at this now from an Africa perspective and saying we as social entrepreneurs can do something. But in reality, we can't do much as just social entrepreneurs. We want to bring in private sector. We want to bring in governments. We want to bring in everybody so that we can have this discussion and solve this problem, transform that space. And if we start transforming now, that world you're talking about, or the one I'm dreaming about, will be closer than it is now as we work the way we are working. Thank you.
Right.
To that.
Those are some of the challenges actually when it comes to collaboration. Some of the things you're mentioning really paints to me the picture of the key challenges you face as we try to collaborate or to do things together. Because you find a lot of things to do with power dynamics, people not being keen to sort of like, people being ready to leave the other behind. So that's why you find a lot of duplication, especially on most of the initiatives which are geared towards change or contributing towards the effectiveness of something. And we as entrepreneurs, or we as entrepreneurs within an organization, our role is to find ways on the solutions of ensuring such a barriers are taken care of. And it's all a shift in terms of the culture and the way the leadership views the collaboration. It has to come from within most of them, because an organization like yours would partner with an organization which is larger than yours. There is that feeling like, well, but people have to have confidence in them. What I'm doing is, and it contributes towards the mission of the organization. How do we do that? I do not have the answer. That's what you're trying to search as change makers, wherever we are.
Yeah, I like that comment, and that is what we're doing in our organization. We are building, the model that we have built is to support those organizations in different sizes, because we are saying, let's come together, and then we meet, we convene, so that they're not talking on their own. Somebody else is helping them talk. Because there's also even conflict. I never mentioned there's a lot of conflict that comes with the coming together. People are in addition to being afraid of losing their identity, they also don't agree, and then they can't tell the donor, for example, the person bringing the money, that I don't agree, because they're like, okay, if I don't agree, I'll be thrown out of this arrangement, and then I won't be part of the, whatever we are doing together. But when somebody else is convening, then it's a different story, because then it doesn't matter whether you're small or big, we have the same conversation and somebody's guiding that conversation. So please come to us, we will help you with that challenge. Thank you.
I can wrap it up in what you just said. You said it in the simplest words, that different solutions are derived when people work in a consortium than when they work in silos. My last question to you, before you make your final remarks, will be around fundraising, and what innovative fundraising initiatives you would like to see driven to help achieve some of these goals that you're talking about here today from ActionAid.
Thank you for that question. And I think we mentioned that one of the key barriers to the social entrepreneurs is funding. And I know here we have funders, we have people who receive funds. And I think the call that is necessary for us all, even as we are in this conversation, is to be able to decentralize funding, the focus of funding, and be able to fund the medium and small micro enterprises, because when you work with the grassroots, you'll be able to achieve results. I think so. It needs to be a mind shift between the funders and the recipients, because they also need to have a collaborative, co-creative relationship. It's not like a funder-fundee relationship, but a partnership. I know we have talked about the partnership. And if we have to achieve transformational development, we need to move from being transactional. And if the fundraising sector, we change our mindset from being transactional and be transformative, we'll be able to aid the social entrepreneurs, and they'll be able to address the barrier of fundraising. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charles, in your call to action, how can we ensure that collaboration, co-creation, and co-leadership are not just left in this conference, but they become part of the DNA of our social change?
Thank you very much. That is excellent. I would say this: let's take action. This is the 6th ACOSE conference, meaning there have been 5 others before it. My call to action is very simple. I think if you look across this room, there are a lot of solutions. People have solutions. We have thought about these things and talked about about them for a long time. We believe that it is already late for action. Action should have been taken. If you look at the climate action space and what is happening, especially in relation to Africa, is that we must take actions and accelerate those actions to be on the global platform to push our interests as Africans. Obviously, that translates also the global platform. But for us here, I think we have the networks necessary to see action actually happen. We are not limited by geographical boundaries. And I think technology and what happened with the experience over COVID that leapfrogged us to the future is that we have everything that we need to make that change happen. Let me speak from a media perspective. If you look at the digital platforms and the change that is happening across media, and we're not talking about legacy media here now, we are talking about the future of media. We are already in that space, and we are able, seated where we are in Nairobi, to collaborate with the other media houses across Africa and across the globe. And for Africa, because I know there are many delegates who have come from across the continent, I just to assure you that if you are thinking about amplifying your story, it does not matter whether you are seated in Nairobi or Uganda or you're in Ethiopia. We have collaborative partnerships with the media houses across Africa. So what happens in that space, therefore, is that we've really collapsed, these barriers, we've removed them, and created an environment where we can support what you are doing wherever you are, using our collaborative partners in other countries. But indeed, in terms of what action then should be taken, how we should move forward, I think it is to have the courage to just move up, come forward, and present to us what you feel would be a solution. And this is beyond media, by the way, because we as a media organization are saying now we are no longer just a media organization, we are a digital company. There's nothing that we cannot handle to bring solutions. Remember what I said earlier is about the impact that we want to achieve. So for the social entrepreneur, my message would be that you see the Standard Group as a partner to help you deliver on what promise you have given to your audiences or what solution you want to achieve. That way then together, we will be able to talk about the future that Wamuyu is talking about in not too much of a distant future. And that will then improve the lives of our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Benjamin to briefly just tell us what success criteria he feels should be the yardstick to check that what we have discussed today and that future is a successful model. As we wind up.
Well, it can be defined in many ways, and it's all, actually I would say it's also a collaborative effort, because it all depends on the initiative you are working on. And you set the specific metrics, but key to it is how many lives have we been able to change, how many lives have we been able to transform. And key to what I do on a day-to-day basis and what my organization is all about, it's all about leveraging technology, knowing that advancements in technology have made it possible to connect people to people, people to opportunities, and people to knowledge. So I would really be more keen on, have I been able to live to some of those key metrics which have been set? Are people impacted in a manner which really indicates that there is indeed a change in their lives and their lives are being transformed?
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to our esteemed panelists. We hope that we have done justice to the discussion, albeit limited time. My name is John Karanja, as I told you, and I'm a teacher, or the head teacher, what you call principal popularly, in the school called Tahiti High or Nairobi Academy. And I'm very happy to be here and to have been part of this. Thank you very much and welcome to our school and see what we're doing there. Thank you very much. You can have a seat.